Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about my Infernal Blow 40 weapon range Screen Popper Slayer. Going into this build, I honestly thought I wouldn't like it and it would be a B or even C tier build just because I'm kinda picky when it comes to mapping characters, but what followed was a big surprise. Infernal Blow is incredibly well positioned this league, not only because ultimatums allow for crazy explosion chains in very tight spaces, but also because Explodey Chest just got nerfed this patch, and this skill now has kind of a unique mechanic that can't be replicated by a single stat on an endgame chest. Not only is Infernal Blow incredibly strong in ultimatums, it also demolishes harvest crops and does extremely well in simulacrums, where monsters will be tightly packed into a field or an arena. In the end, I did decide to not go for deck stacking with the Hollow Palm Keystone, simply because it did not allow me to run gloves with strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies, basically giving me a free Ancestral Call support in my glove slot, as well as being able to go Slayer for incredible strike range, which ended up at 40 in the end, as well as a ton of AoE for huge overlapping explosions, overleach, and big single target damage. In the end, I'm incredibly surprised with the outcome of this build, and it definitely gave me hope for strike skills in general, and I will surely revisit this type of build again in the future. With that being said, let's jump into the build portion of the video. Alright, so before we deep dive into the items, I want to quickly address the elephant in the room, so to say. Why would you play this over the Hollow Palm version? And it's pretty easy. So I started this build as a Hollow Palm version. I was running a Raider, and the thing with Raider is it's not Slayer. So what do I mean by that? So for this build here, Slayer is absolutely insane. For every single strike skill, Slayer is completely insane, and the single reason is impact. +4 melee strike range is crazy. I know it's really hard to grasp how good this set is if you aren't really a regular, I don't know, strike skill player, but this combined with all the other stuff that Slayer gives you is just too huge to give up, in my personal opinion. Also, the up to 50, actually 60 area of effect you get from these two nodes is really hard to get back. You don't really want to run a carcass check, especially in Hollow Palm. You can't really afford to run a carcass check because you will be like 4.5k life or something. So that on top of everything else, that on top of like overleach, we'll go over it. But the problem is you have to go Raider. And why is that? That is simply because you have to run Garokon's Flight unless you want to have like 4k life. See, if you're Raider, you're getting a lot of movement speed back that you're losing from not running boots like this. You have to run Garokon's Flight because you have like no flat life. You're on the right side of the tree, you're stacking decks, which doesn't give you any life. You're not in the strength region, you don't have access to too much life. You kind of have to run Garokon's Flight if you want to feel good with the build, meaning you will lose out on a lot of movement speed that Raider will give you back. I understand. I don't think it's ever worth it. I'll be completely honest. You lose cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen. You lose all the move. You lose tailwind, elusive. You lose so much potential in your boot slot, and all you get is basically like this isn't even really an upside. This just makes decks to strength, because strength also gives you +2 per 10 strength. But this basically just reverts that. Other than that, there's nothing really on here. So these boots are really trash, but they are necessary for the Hollow Palm build to not die, basically. So you're losing that. You're basically losing the boot slot. But not only that, you're also losing the glove slot, which is, for a strike build, the most crucial slot. The glove slot is where, with a Maven Orb, you can get strike skills target 2 additional nearby enemies. It's really hard to explain just how good this mod is, but I would probably explain it in the sense of, if you're a bow player, that's like giving you an extra LMP. I wouldn't go as far and say like GMP or something, but I just want to make clear how insane gloves you can make in the glove slot. So +4 melee strike range. Strike skills deal target 2 additional nearby enemies. Sure, you can get Tribal Fury either way. So you will have 2 additional, you will basically strike 2 targets. But going from 2 to 4 is just crazy. That's like putting Chain on your Tornado Shot build. It is absolutely massive. So just for that, I played the Raider to like level 87 or something. I just had to stop and had to try this. And it felt so much better. It's so much better clear. Maybe I'm just used to different standards of clearing, but I just couldn't bring myself to play the Hollow Palm any longer. Yeah, so this build is just a lot more durable in that sense. So that's just my 2 cents on the Hollow Palm versus non-Hollow Palm debate. But I don't wanna diminish Hollow Palm in the sense that it is a very, very good budget option. The thing is, a lot of people make it about min-maxing Hollow Palm when, in my opinion, it should be embraced as a budget option. You don't have to get a weapon. You don't have to get these gloves here. You're doing very good damage even without all those things. In this build, you have to fight more to get the damage, but you get in the end, you still have the same or even more damage, but you get all those quality of life improvements, like getting the area of effect on those explosions. It's just, it feels so much better. I can't believe how good this skill feels now that I've redone the whole build. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I don't wanna harsh too long on the Hollow Palm issue. I just wanted to point this one out because I feel like this is kind of a evolution in the sense that if you have the currency, you should definitely go for this version of the build. Now let's go over the Ascendancy. We are a Slayer, as I already mentioned, and the one huge note here is impact. +4 melee range, huge for the build. 5% ink AoE per enemy killed recently while you're mapping. This is always at 50%, which is the max. You also get 10% here, so 60% AoE in total. You can't really get that much AoE from anywhere. You don't have any mechanic that gives you AoE. So this is really, really nice. You can also get AoE here, which is the next points I would take. I'm currently level 94. Yeah, these are the next points I'm going to take. But yeah, this is just invaluable alone. But then on top, you also get 50 global accuracy rating, which is really nice because it's kind of hard to get accuracy on the left side of the tree. It's a problem for strength build in general. So those 50% come in very handy. Brutal Fervor, Overleach, I don't have to say anymore. If you have ever played with Overleach, it's so much quality of life. You also get 10% reduced damage taken while leeching, which is huge. So on top of the Fortify that we already get, we also get this. But also a nice thing about being Slayer is that you can take the Feed the Fury cluster jewels, which Feed the Fury, 30% increased damage and 15% attack speed. That is really, really hard to get. Like, this is like double what you should usually get from a notable, but it's only while leeching. And while you might have seen other builds that don't have Overleach take this, it's fake DPS. They don't have it always up. It's not always up. It's only up when they go down and then leech back up in that time frame. But if they're full, it doesn't. But with Overleach, it's always up. It's crazy good. And last but not least, Headsman and Bane of Legends. I mean, Bane of Legends, I don't have to talk too much. It's the big call. It's increased movement speed and decreased attack speed, which is huge. So yeah, overall, Slayer, an absolute no-brainer for this build. All right, so now for the items. So Infernal Blow scales off of physical damage. So what you want is as high physical damage of a two-handed weapon as you can afford. This gets converted. We'll talk about that later. But I went for this one here. This one cost me 35x. This is a very high-endish weapon. But if you cannot afford it, I would go for a Cane of Kulamak with physical damage, attack speed, and if you can afford it, also crit strike. I bought this one for 10x. It already was 6-linked. If you want to go even further down, you can probably go for basically any two-handed staff. Whatever you can afford, you can start with. You can upgrade it later. But a Cane of Kulamak, I think, is a really, really good to start. This one here, if you have the monies, try and get a staff with +2 or +3 weapon range in the suffixes. It is pretty big. but I know it's really, really hard to get in addition to all the physical damage. I'm just mentioning it here because there is up to +3 range on a Warlord base. Other than that, with the weapon done, Chaos is pretty much a no-brainer for this build. We only need 1/6 link. You can go for a rare chest, but the amount of flat life this gives us just makes gearing very, very, very easy. So I think it's a no-brainer. You can do whatever with the chest slot. It's also pretty inexpensive. As for boots, as always, tailor these towards whatever you're doing. If you're mapping, get as much movement speed as you can. Cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen is a really cool combo. Then you don't have to get it on flasks. But yeah, boots, flex slot, nothing really super necessary here. As for the gloves, we already talked about it. The only mod you should really, really have, no matter your budget, is strike skills, target 2 additional nearby enemies. I would rather have that one mod with 5 shitty mods than super good gloves. Like, if you have like all T1 stats, like T1 life, 3 triple res, melee fist, whatever, I don't care. This one stat alone is better than anything else you can have on the gloves. I just made good ones with also +4 melee range. You can awaken or orb that together and just see what you get, which is what I did. I settled on the strength plus fire res, and then I put a iceling veiled orb on. But just that one mod is really, really important, and it will make the build feel extremely smooth. And last but not least, the helmet slot. There's pretty good budget options out there. Like, you can go for where is it? Yeah, this one was the one I was using before. A Crown of the Inward Eye. This one is pretty budget. I think with Infernal Blow, I think I paid like 30C for this. I ran this before I crafted this. You get Transfiguration of Body, which gives you increased attack damage per increased maximum life you have. Which is really, really nice. If you can get the helmet enchant on top, that costs you like 30C. This helmet alone is like 1C. I would really get some kind of Infernal Blow helmet enchant. But yeah, that's like the budget option. And if you have the monies, crafting nearby enemies take LE damage and nearby enemies have -12 fire res is a really, really nice combo. As you can see, I don't have much on there other than that. I didn't really craft this to the fullest. So, but if you can afford this kind of craft, then go for this. And yeah, so the jewelry, obviously, if you have a headhunter, run a headhunter. I don't think I have to tell you that. But I ran a Torrent Reclamation. This is really, really nice for Slayer because it has life recovery rate on top of everything else. So you can't really use the cooldown recovery rate, but the life recovery is huge for your leech. You have Overleech with Volpact, and on top of that, you're gonna regen even more life. Like, you're regening 50% of your life every second. It's absolutely outrageous. Also, attack and cast speed, and the Harbinger of Time makes you faster and attack faster, which also makes Multistrike just feel better. If you cannot afford a Torrent Reclamation, go for any leather Stygian with a lot of res. As you will see, I'm kind of res starved because I'm running this in the belt slot, but you can make that up and then get better jewels. I will talk about that later, but if you can afford a Torrent Reclamation, awesome, GG. As for rings, these are complete flex slots as always. If you can, now I would say that you either get an Assassin's Mark ring or a Flammability ring, whatever is in your price range. Assassin Mark rings are usually a little bit more expensive. They also do a little bit more damage to rares and uniques, but they don't work on like normal mobs, on magic mobs. So you can also go for Flammability. It's a little bit less damage, but not by much. It might be that you need some accuracy somewhere, but other than that, this is a complete flex slot, especially if you get your resistances elsewhere. This one I crafted. I bought the base for like 20C and then put on 1 Essence of Hysteria, and I got this, and I just went with it. The dex here is only crafted because I was running Headhunter first, but obviously for the video, I put some things around and I run torrents, and I had to put decks here, so maybe get some decks somewhere. And last but not least, the amulet slot. So I went for an alls with anger. Alls with angers are very cheap, actually. They're like 1 or 2x. The other alls are a lot more expensive, but nobody really goes for the anger ones. So I just went for this. I put on Constitution. You can put on whatever. If you don't have the monies, I would probably, as always, go for Divine Judgment. It's really, really nice. But yeah, you don't have to go for alls. Anything that has like life, crit multi, maybe accuracy. That's basically it. You can even get melee strike range, by the way, on amulets if you hit a certain veil. I think it's like +2. So maybe do that. Play around with it. This is the semi-budget option. As far as Flask setup, I just want to make something clear real quick because I got this comment in one of our last videos, is the movement speed during Flask effect from the hybrid mod. So you see Cinderswallow Urn has one veiled mod. And the veiled mod I unveiled here is increased movement speed during Flask effect and chance to avoid being stunned during Flask effect. This normally does not stack with Adrenaline, which is also increased movement speed. But on Cinderswallow Urn, it is a Jun unveil, which means it's not a craft. Like usually if you would craft this on any flask, it would not stack with this, but here it's a unique mod, so it does stack. So on Cinderswallow, it does stack. On anything else, do not craft it if you also have a Adrenaline. This is really important to know, and a mistake I see a lot of people make all the time. Other than that, get a bleed removal flask, life flask. You don't have to, as always, you don't have to run a life flask. I like running a life flask in some builds. This is one of them. Alchemist's Quicksilver, no-brainer. Diamond Flask, no-brainer. And then last but not least, Lion's Roar. I'm usually not a huge fan of this flask. I know it's really, really, really strong. 25% more melee fizz damage. That's a lot. I'm usually not that big of a fan because of the knockback. For example, in my Cyclone builds, I try to exclude this as much as I can. But in this build, as you will see with Infernal Blow, you don't even see the effect because everything gets one-shot anyways, and against a lot of bosses are immune to knockbacks. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but I would definitely go with the Lion's Roar here. As for the gem setup, as we talked about, we're running Anomalous Infernal Blow. Now, what Anomalous Infernal Blow does is it gives you Explosion has 20% chance to apply uncharged debuff on hit. What this basically does is it gives you more explosions. So if you can afford this one, it's like 2x right now, but you don't have to do it. It's very good for clear, but you can also go for the normal version. As for that, as always, the woke gems are not necessary, but they're nice to have. Awakened Melee Physical is probably the most important one in a melee build because it also gives you a chance to Intimidate on hit, which is 10% more damage. But then there's just Awakened LE damage, Elemental Focus, then Awakened Multistrike. Awakened Multistrike is not that much better than normal Multistrike, I would say. It can lock you in place longer depending on your attack speed. I would say that the normal Multistrike is even a little bit nicer to handle, but this is more single target damage. Obviously, don't buy it if you can't afford it. It's not a no-brainer. And as the last link, I went with Divergent Inspiration, just because I really like when my main skill is really cheap and I can just spam it without thinking about it. Gives us the reduced mana cost, and then on top, like 36-37% more damage. As for the aura set, so this is in our main setup. As for the auras, we're running Enlighten. Now, I think Enlighten has to be like level 2 or something for you to actually go with the setup, so you don't have to have a level 4. Flesh and Stone, we're always in Sand Stance. We're using Blood and Sand, which is just here, and we're using Flesh and Stone, both always in Sand Stance. Blood and Sand gives us more area of effect, and Flesh and Stone gives us nearby enemies are blinded, which is a really, really nice defensive mechanism. And on top, we take 11% less damage from attack farther away. So these two are really, really nice. One is for AoE, one is for defenses. You can't really get anything from the increased fizz damage taken, so never go into Blood Stance, just leave it on Sand Stance, and that's that. And then we have Anger. Obviously, this one doesn't reserve any mana, so it is actually here. I forgot about that. Anger is just there for the Watcher's Eye. If you don't have a Anger Watcher's Eye, you don't even have to run the Amulet, and you don't even have to run like Anger at all. It gives us fire damage, which isn't fizz damage, so it doesn't scale our fizz added as extra fire damage. It was there because I had a pretty neat Anger Watcher's Eye. Otherwise, go for any Precision Watcher's Eye. or don't go for Watcher's Eye at all, whatever your budget lets you do. Then we go Herald of Ash. Now, the overkill is nice and all. Mostly this is just used as 15% of Fizz as extra fire. You already have explosions, you don't really need the Herald of Ash, but it's nice for damage. And then we go for Precision, as high as you can afford in your mana. This gives us flat accuracy, which is really hard to get. You can also get it from rings though, and play around with the slot, whatever you feel is necessary. And then we have a Leap Slam setup with faster attacks, which is really nice to move around. Usually while you're mapping, you have more attack speed than this, because you get all the Feed the Fury buffs, which give you attack speed while leeching. We're not leeching right now. And last but not least, we have a single target setup, which is Anomalous. It doesn't matter if it's anomalous or not, but Ancestral Protector, which gives you more attack speed. Ancestral Warchief, which gives you more melee damage. Now, usually you can't use those two, because you can only place one totem at a time, but this gets overwritten by multiple totems, so you can just throw both down and get both the buffs. Both together are like 35 to 40% more damage, so that's really, really huge if you actually have the time to place them down. It's really good against bosses where you can like just pre-put them down while the boss does some fancy voice line or whatever. And then at the end we have Combustion. These totems ignite enemies, and we get the effect of Combustion, which is minus 19% fire res, which is really, really nice. But with that being said, let's get into the passive tree. All right, so as already stated, we are a Slayer. We start from the Duelist area, go down here, Art of the Gladiator, no-brainer. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is we're actually using a Replica Pure Talent just for the +2 melee strike range. You don't have to do this, but I would just do it. It gets us to like 37 weapon range, which is crazy. And I mean, why not? It also gives us basically, whenever you have the space for a unique jewel that does something, you have a chance to get a good corruption, because a lot of people will be corrupting those, and you can get like corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you, you cannot be hindered, some good thing, and you can get that into your build pretty easily. So that's really nice. I just went for this because of the corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. But yeah, you can also just go with life crit multi, whatever you want. We go down here, everything with melee strike range you take, and also Tribal Fury. Now, while you're leveling, I would say until you're here and you have Tribal Fury, I wouldn't go with Infernal Blow leveling, but after that, it actually gets pretty smooth. Lava Lash, pretty self-explanatory. Now, in total, we're using 3 large cluster jewels. These are kind of optional, you don't have to take them, but you at least want 1 for Overlord. Now, there's a few reasons why we're staffs. Number 1, you get block and spell block, which is always huge. Number 2, staffs have some of the best nodes on the tree, and that's even more true for elemental attack staff builds, because they also get these here. Now, these are crazy good, absolutely crazy good, and I would recommend you just fill out all these staff nodes. You get free endurance charges from this here. It's always up. You get +2 melee strike range. So I would really, really urge you to get a staff. And on top of that, you get free Fortify with Overlord. This is the only really expensive large cluster jewel. I think I paid like 8x for this one, but all the other ones are pretty affordable. All you want is Feed the Fury and weight advantage for the other two. This is just chance to deal double damage. I think these costed me like, I think 70, 80 C if I remember correctly. Yeah, because nobody wants weight advantage, just this combination. People really, really want Overlord though, but you only need 1 to get the Fortify, then you're done and you can do whatever you want with the other ones. Fill out as much life as you can. My next nodes are, because I'm still only level 94, are going to be more AoE, this and this probably, and then fill these 2 life nodes out. So in the end, we're probably going to be somewhere around 7k life. Now, anything else to mention? Oh yeah, my Watcher's Eye. If you have the Anger setup, you go for a Anger Watcher's Eye. The best mod is Fire Pen is the best one. And after that, Physical as extra fire is the next best one. If you can afford both, I think I paid 20x for this. I don't really remember. If you can only afford one, just the pen alone costs like 1x. So just go for that then. I just got this because I needed the extra res. Then so I have a fancy Lethal Pride setup here. My Lethal Pride, so basically what you can do if you want to find a good Lethal Pride is when people are done farming their 5-ways, they will usually put up all the timeless jewels they just farmed. So just take all of them. Like you can buy like 20 at once and just try them all out and see what you get and keep the best one and then just resell the rest. You don't have to spend a single divine orb. All you have to do is do the trades, but you're not spending anything. You're only spending the one that you keep. The rest you just resell again. But yeah, this one's really, really nice here. It gives us, I think, yeah, double damage, fizzes extra fire. Oh yeah, I forgot to take this one, yeah. Another chance to deal double damage, and some melee damage. It's not really that important, but it's nice to have. You can replace this with any other jewel. As for normal jewels, I went for a lot of res because I'm running Headhunter, but in the suffix slot, you can also go for crit multi, attack speed. I would say that max life is, you would really want max life, but any jewel with max life is going to be more expensive. So if you cannot afford that, what I would do is just cut some other damage nodes, go for life on the tree, and then go for damage on your jewels. If you have like 4 stats with all damage on it, it's usually not going to be very expensive. So you can also do that. And yeah, so we also took Avatar Fire. You can take these 2 nodes here. It also fully converts your fizz to fire, but I'm not doing really any damage other than fire, so just taking Avatar Fire is going to be better. But if you want to run something like an Adziri's Promise, then just go with these nodes here. But yeah, now at the end, just for a quick leveling section here, the first 2 levels, it doesn't really matter what you go for. You can go for like Molten Strike or like Perforate or whatever you like. Try out new things. It doesn't really matter. And you go for Red Beaks, first 2 levels, and then once you're level 13, you transition to Limp Split, which is really, really nice. Then at level 27, you transition into Joffrey's Baptism. And at level 40, this is going to be your weapon all the way up till your endgame weapon, the Cauterizer. This is gonna, at this point, the build's gonna completely take over. Level 40, after that, you're gonna feel like a god. As always, belt slot, Maginord's Girdle is really nice since we're scaling off of fizz damage. You know the rest. Something I want to mention here real quick is, once again, that I would not level with Infernal Blow until you get Tribal Fury. So either just rush to it or just path normally and just play something else in the meantime. But yeah, that's what I would recommend for leveling. Now that's it for the build guide. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.